Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I believe is it the New York Times, one of these mainstream newspapers, ran an article about too much protein, which I will link down below for you guys. And man, has this caused a response in the fitness world. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing. See if I can scale up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. All right, this is funny because people have taken this article so far out of context. I've watched people reading the comments and seeing who else posted it on social media to discuss it. I see two groups of people who completely misunderstand the entire point of this article. They're taking it out of context. Number one, you've got the vegans jumping up saying, see, too much protein is bad for you. And they're starting with their stupidity and nonsense. Then you have some of the bodybuilders and some of the bodybuilding coaches are sitting there jumping in, arguing. And let's talk about that for a bit, because we already know that the vegans are wrong. If it comes to actual fitness and gaining strength and gaining muscle, yes, you need to consume more protein than most vegans advise you to do. Let's be honest here, all right? Most vegans are extremely ignorant of nutrition, and I hate to have to be that way. I know some who aren't. In fact, I've met some vegan dietitians. However, the average vegan is pretty fucking stupid when it comes to nutrition. Let's just be honest. And if they honestly think you're going to build significant muscle on 40 grams of protein a day, they live in a delusional world. Now, that being said, bodybuilders and many people in the fitness world also live in a delusional world, and that's what got addressed in this thing. There's this discussion that there are a lot of people out there, that there are certain nutritionists and stuff pushing people to consume much, much higher amounts of protein than they really need. And they're pointing out, we don't know the long-term effects of this. And that is a fact. We do have some short-term studies showing that higher protein diets, basic high protein diets, don't seem to cause any short-term problems. But this is a grand experiment. And I've seen all these guys like Alan Aragon and Brad Schoenfeld, everyone chime in on this. And you know what, guys? You guys have to admit, as men of science, we don't have long-term studies. And that's what these registered dietitians are talking about. All right, these are registered dietitians. This is their area of expertise. And a lot of them are saying, look, this is unnecessary for people's goals, the amounts that people are recommending. And we don't actually know in the long term. We don't know what this is going to do to you in 20, 30, 40 years because we don't have any society that we can really study the longevity of who are consuming the kind of proteins that people are recommending here. 200, 250, 300 grams of protein a day. Crazy numbers like this. We don't know in the long term what that's going to do to humans. This is a big experiment in the fitness world. And so maybe a lot of these guys are going to have to study you when you're 60 years old and see how you're doing. Because we don't know based on the short-term evidence. Now, that being said, you have a lot of people who jump up and say, well, you know, these dietitians recommend an amount of protein, but fuck these guys. They don't look like bodybuilders. They don't have huge amounts of muscle. They're not winning Mr. Olympia, so I'm not going to listen to them. You guys know how fucking stupid that sounds. Think about other endeavors. How about football? How about American football? If you were trying to get a scholarship, or you had a scholarship and you were trying to get into the NFL, if you stood there and said, man, I'm not going to listen to these sports nutritionists, dietitians tell me what to eat. They've never won a Super Bowl. My athletic trainers never won a Super Bowl. Fuck these people. They don't know what they're talking about. You would be considered literally fucking retarded, and you would deserve to not become a champion. You would deserve to not get that NFL contract because you're too stupid to understand that people can actually help you make the body work who've never won a Super Bowl, who've never won a Mr. Olympia. In fact, many of the people who've won these things actually don't know that much about this stuff. The smartest ones, or the ones who, not necessarily the smartest, but the ones who do the best, oftentimes let someone else who is more knowledgeable on the areas tell them what to do. And they provide the work ethic and the genetics. They don't do their own thinking as far as their diet and their training and stuff go. They let people who know more than they do coach them. And oftentimes those people become the best champions because they take the advice of people who are more intelligent than them, not because that person's won a Super Bowl, because maybe the person who won the Super Bowl had someone smarter than him tell him what to do, and he provided the genetics, the talent, and the work ethic. He provided the body and let someone else provide the brains. So, when you take that stance, you basically are displaying ignorance and stupidity. You don't want to do that because some of these sports nutritionists who are making these recommendations are producing NFL champions. They are producing 350-pound linemen. They are producing Olympic lifting gold medal winners. All right, they know how to put muscle on people from a diet perspective. And it was pointed out in this article that people have this misconception that if they go on 300 grams of protein that they're going to gain more muscle than 120 grams of protein. They're flat wrong. The evidence does not support this. The evidence does not support this. Most of you out there, 120 grams of protein, which is the exact number listed in the article by a registered dietitian, is as much protein as most of you would ever need to consume to gain maximum muscle mass. In fact, remember the anabolic steroid studies we had? They were on about 120 grams of protein, 100 to 120. Those guys gained 18 pounds of muscle in 20 weeks without even lifting weights. Now, when have any of you gained 18 pounds of muscle, not 18 pounds of body weight, but muscle confirmed on a DEXA scan while losing body fat in 20 weeks? All right? The protein intake doesn't have to be as high as you think it does. And people need to remember 120 gram of day protein diet is a high protein diet. No one's advocating a low protein diet for gaining muscle. It's just that you have a whole industry that has built up this idea in order to sell you supplements that that an extremely high protein diet is somehow beneficial. They're taking the normally recommended high protein diet for athletes, the high protein diet recommended to people who are put on anabolics, who are stuck in bed, who need to regenerate and rebuild 40 pounds of lost muscle, like burn victims or people who suffered major muscle wasting diseases. They put them on 100 grams of protein and some anabolics, and they regain 40, 50 pounds of lost muscle mass. They regrow it while laying in a bed. All right, this is understood. We know how much protein the body needs to gain enormous amounts of muscle, and it's not 200 grams. There is not a human being on the face of the earth who needs 200 or 250 grams of protein a day to gain muscle mass quickly. There's not a human being on earth that needs that. It's not necessary, and that's the point that they're making. And they're not, again, we're not talking about consuming a low protein diet. No one is recommending that for people who want to gain muscle. But you need to understand that a high protein diet for gaining muscle is 1 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. That is sufficient to gain maximum muscle mass. That's enough to gain maximum muscle. You're not going to benefit from more. Now, people are talking about the satiety end of it. The satiety end of it, yeah, but there's also another higher satiety food than protein. Anyone think of what that is? Fiber. You eat more salads, you eat more whole grains, that's going to do more for your satiety than eating an extra 100 grams of protein a day. Well, I'm not saying protein doesn't have a high satiety because it's proven to. But people could consume fiber to get the same dietary benefits that they want. And remember, again, we're not talking about low protein diets here for people who want to lose fat, who want to gain muscle, things like that. These dietitians here are concerned because people are recommending excessive amounts of protein. And just because that excessive amount of protein hasn't shown for healthy people with healthy kidneys and healthy livers to cause problems in the short term, we don't know what it's going to do in the long term. And you need to remember, if you are training hard, your training actually puts a strain on your kidneys. All right, lifting weights puts a strain on your kidneys. Whether you realize that or not, you are breaking down tissue proteins. You are increasing things like the protein, creatine, all sorts of stuff in your urine as a result of training hard. You are working your kidneys harder. If you're consuming excessive amounts of protein while doing this for years on end, we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be on your kidneys. This whole combination of things, it could end up being detrimental. We don't have any 20-year studies on it. All we have are short-term studies, and that's their concern. If people are taking a big risk, they are taking a risk that may not have any payoff at all. Meaning we already know how much protein you need to consume to gain muscle. Sports dietitians, people who are registered dietitians who specialize in sports and athletes already have the calculations and numbers that they use to make champions. I mean, I'll tell people, do you honestly think that your prep coach is going to have more knowledge than someone with a master's or a PhD in this field in dietetics who specialized in sports nutrition for their graduate work and who works with professional athletes? Not amateur bodybuilders, but people who work with professional athletes with this sort of background and produce champions. Do you honestly think your magazine writer or your prep coach is going to have more knowledge or experience than they do in creating champions? Think about that for a minute when you start thinking about these ultra high protein intakes. And again, remember, this is a big experiment in the fitness world going on, and we don't actually know if it's going to hurt you in the long term. But what we do know is that there's no evidence to suggest that it's going to help you, other than suppress your appetite a little, which could be done with fiber just as easily. That's it. So, take-home message here, what this article is breaking down is that there seems to be potential risks that we don't know about yet, we don't fully understand, we've never tested. Potential risk with no payout and no reward, and it's being pushed as the greatest thing these days in the fitness world, and it may not be based in truth at all, and it's cause for concern, and they're simply telling people to err on the side of caution. And at the end of the day, they're recommending, just like this dietitian did here, consume whole foods rather than a supplement to get these things. If you want some more protein in your smoothie, drop in a little bit of Greek yogurt in there. An easy to find whole food, something like that. Probably a better choice than a lot of these protein powders. And it's also been pointed out, do protein powders have a lot of toxicity issues? Yes. Many of them out there, when they've been independently studied. You guys remember the big article that was done on that, testing all the lead and arsenic and everything in there, and some of the top brands, the best, highest quality brands of protein out there supposedly had excessive amounts of heavy metals in them. And that was Consumer Reports who did that testing. They paid for the lab test themselves and published it. So just food for thought out there when you think about, well, if your protein you think your protein needs are so high that you need to consume a protein supplement to reach them. Maybe, just maybe, you're being hustled by an industry that doesn't have your best interest in mind. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.